Hey, welcome everyone to a casual gamer's review of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. If you want to see the written version of this review, you can find a link to my website in the video description. Now, there are no spoilers in this review, and I'll conclude this review with a verdict for longtime fans of Indiana Jones like me, and for people that haven't watched the original Indiana Jones trilogy, which is a movie sin in itself. It's one of the greatest movie trilogies of all time. I say trilogy because the fourth movie was so bad and horrible that I tell myself it wasn't a real movie, it didn't happen, it didn't exist. In fact, it was so bad I stopped caring to hear about Indiana Jones news, and I think there was a fifth movie, but I try not to really pay attention to it. So this kept me skeptical about this game. I'll say this, all my doubts were removed though. This game was spectacular and should have been the fourth movie plot. In fact, if you watch this review, play the game, and have never watched the original movies, trust me, you'll love the movies, it's worth watching afterwards. Okay, so the plot of the game takes place in 1937. Which is actually between the timeline of movies Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade. However, the game starts with the same iconic opening of the first movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I found this strange but realized how brilliant of a marketing move this is. The developers accomplished two things with this. They showcase the graphics and how comparable they could make it to the movie, and it also draws in fans of Indiana Jones like myself with a strong sense of nostalgia. The game then quickly changes scenes as it turns out Indiana was dreaming and reminiscing of his adventure from the opening scene. Once he wakes up, we see Indiana Jones having drinks and his friend Marcus Brody passing out from potentially getting drunk while on college campus that they both teach at. Indiana hears some loud noises and areas of the campus left in shambles. As he investigates, he encounters a man who is almost 7 feet tall and nearly impervious to pain. This giant-like man then steals an ancient relic from the college campus and escapes. This triggers Indiana to chase the giant across the world, only to be caught up in a typical insane Indiana Jones adventure, which includes colliding with an evil army that starts with the letter N and were a heavy force during World War II. I won't say the name of the army in case the YouTube algorithm doesn't like it, but you should know what army I'm referencing. But anyway, the main thing you need to know is that the story is very well written, and the ending did not disappoint. In fact, the ending left me very happy with how the game was made. Do you need to watch the movies to play the game? No. The game does an excellent job of explaining that Dr. Indiana Jones is an archaeologist professor at a college who just happens to go on swashbuckling adventures to uncover ancient relics. But again, do yourself a favor and watch the original trilogy movies. There are a ton of cinematics within the game, but far more gameplay. It felt like I was playing what could have been the real fourth Indiana Jones movie. There's a lot more to the story, but I'll leave it at that to prevent spoilers, and I was able to beat the game within 15 hours. Now, the time I played does include me doing a bunch of side quests, but there's certainly more to be done. The game takes place in multiple places of the world with very different settings. But I'm only going to show the first few repeatedly in this game footage because I just don't want to spoil anything for you in case you want to play this game. All levels have rather linear paths, except for 3 geographies that have rather large open exploration areas with the ability to uncover more items related to archaeology or simply helping the locals. Side quests do have their benefits as you can potentially uncover stat boosts for Indiana Jones, which he finds in books. They include increasing fist fighting combat damage, weapon damage, pistol damage, and you kind of get the idea. Other upgrades that can be uncovered by helping locals is collecting medicine for local doctors, which can increase Indiana's health and stamina permanently. My favorite upgrade was kind of a second win. In certain circumstances, if Indiana is defeated, enemies will slowly disperse thinking he's defeated, leave him alone. The game then allows you to crawl as Indiana has to reach and pick up his lucky hat. When he puts it on, it then resumes gameplay from where he was defeated instead of spawning at the last checkpoint. Speaking of enemies, this game can be tough at times. Now, there are difficulty level settings. You can put on easy if you want to, but just telling you know that it's a tough game, depending on how you handle it, of course. Let's dive deeper into why. First, the game is in first-person mode, not third-person. Most people and myself have doubts about first-person view because most games related to history, archaeology, and treasure hunting are usually in third-person point of view. Take the Uncharted and Assassin's Creed game series as just a couple examples. However, the gaming studio accomplished and made first-person mode work very well in The Great Circle. This adds the welcome challenge of required stealthy planning and at times perfect timing since you can't see things from an unrealistic angle. You have to know when enemies are going to patrol a certain area at a certain time. If you're caught by enemies, they tend to blow whistles to alert their comrades for help, and it gets tough. The game tries to take a somewhat realistic approach to combat and game mechanics. The game's pacing and combat mechanics take a somewhat realistic approach to combat. Indiana isn't a war machine fighting God like other game characters, like Master Chief from Halo. He swings his fist like someone in real life and in the movies. If he takes a hit, he'll stagger a bit to recover. Even his climbing and parkour mechanics is very slow and clunky, again like a realistic approach. However, this was actually a welcome challenge from completely unrealistic mechanics like the excellent Uncharted game series or a slew of other games I could mention. There's even a stamina bar for most intense actions, which will include running, punching, swinging melee weapons, climbing, and carrying bodies. I chose to never use guns throughout most of my gameplay, as I instantly regretted it the one time I did. The gunfire noise alerts a ton of enemies instantly, and there are very limited bullets per gun provided. When Indiana takes bullet damage from being shot, it'll take him a second to recover, and aim is completely thrown off. Again, the game takes a bit of a realistic approach. So I opted to be stealthy, using silent weapon knockout attacks and hiding bodies from patrolling enemies. Sometimes I wouldn't fight anyone at all and sneak to the next checkpoint objective. Ultimately, Indiana is a typical action hero in the movies, taking hits and beating up more bad guys than you could in real life. However, in the movies, he also does take a fair amount of damage, gets beat up, defeated, captured, and so on. This game did an excellent job of replicating that from the movies. It's not like being a Battlefield or Call of Duty campaign protagonist, gunslinging mayhem, which is fun, but this game brought a refreshing change. As expected from top-notch Indiana Jones games, there are a ton of puzzles, many available in side quests, and some are required to complete during the main story. Personally, I'm not a fan of puzzles in games, but I have to admit that they were very well designed and interesting, as expected from a real Indiana movie. Interestingly enough, the developers included levels of difficulty for puzzles you can pick that are completely separate from difficulty settings from enemy combat settings. Now, graphics don't define a game if it's going to be good or bad, but I have to admit this is an amazing looking game. Facial animations are top notch and do a superb job of making me think I'm playing an Indiana movie. Now, don't get me wrong, there are many parts of the game where Indiana in the Great Circle doesn't look like young Harrison Ford did. But that's only because young Harrison Ford, and even current old Harrison Ford, is such an iconic actor. It's hard not to find anyone in the world that wouldn't recognize him. Overall, I still have to give credit to developers despite Indiana in the game having a bit of a babyface look to him. I played this game on Xbox Series X and there was next to no load time, no frame dropping, but some bugs were present. Corpses of defeated bodies would sometimes have some limbs going through a wall. On some rare occasions when using a key to open a door, Indiana's hand would go through the door. An NPC I was talking to was fishing and the fish would start floating in midair in front of his face, which is a bit comical. However, there was one really annoying, buggy, critical NPC, and that's the character of Gina. I don't want to go into the story details of her to prevent spoilers, but she is crucial to the story. She's quick-witted, brave, skilled, and daring during cinematics and during gameplay. However, other times during gameplay, she's incredibly annoying because of how buggy she is. On very rare occasion, she'll help fight enemies where it's unavoidable, but her and the enemy she's fighting will just be punching mid-air, like I'm watching Paul versus Mike Tyson. Other times when I'm being stealthy, she'll keep moving and she never stays still. This is incredibly annoying for two main reasons. She'll go directly in front of enemies, so I assume she's going to fight and expose us, but she'll randomly be invisible to enemies. Other rare times, she'll fight and expose us completely, which causes me to take damage and use bandages to heal, which are not commonly found. Otherwise, I'll be sneaking around and trying to find enemy patrolling patterns, and she'll constantly block my view. But enemies can see through her and will start to notice me hiding. Thankfully, Gina's interference only happens a minimal amount of total gameplay, but it was annoying when it did happen. Sound is top notch. For the first few hours of the game, Indiana hardly spoke, which made me a little upset because he's a talkative character. In the game, he's actually voiced by one of the most famous game voice actors, Troy Baker, who's especially well known for the Last of Us series. It's not actually Harrison Ford doing the voicing here. As the game progresses, Indiana becomes very talkative, and Troy's ability to replicate a young Harrison Ford's voice is amazing. I watched a voice comparison video of Troy and young Harrison Ford, and while there's a slight difference, it's not that noticeable as you play the game. It's truly astonishing what the sound engineers and Troy did, and thankfully did not have to rely on voice AI.
Didn't realize I was speaking to the last pharaoh of the Ramesside dynasty. My apologies, Your Majesty.
Other characters sound top-notch and dialogue is rich. Each character has a very unique personality and stays true to the nature of the movies. Some characters are tough, some serious, and some downright hysterical, and cause for some classic Indiana movie comedy style scenes. However, my favorite sound samples come from two things. The first is a whiplash sound effect.
That's close enough.
The next sound sample that I love was the classic punching sound effect that you'll only hear in Indiana movies. Sometimes if an enemy was alone, I would purposely fight them just to hear those satisfying sound effects. So who is this game for? Well, I played it through Game Pass subscription for 1 month, which I'll probably cancel now that I've done my playthrough. It was absolutely worth the money, and for anyone that has doubts about first-person stealthy gameplay, I highly recommend you try this method as it's inexpensive. What if you're a fan of Indiana Jones and need to pay full price? If, for example, you're waiting for the PS5 release, which I believe might be in sometime in 2025, don't even doubt yourself at all. Pay full price if you're an Indiana fan and you'll be in for a treat. If you never watched Indiana movies and Game Pass is not available, do you pay full price? I would recommend that you do. Give it a try. I'm doubtful you'll regret it. There would be a very small group of gamers that would enjoy it, and if you're tight on money, then at least give it a shot when it's on sale. It's a highly recommended game. Here's hoping that the game studio realizes how well everyone at the studio did in making this game, and they make an equal or better sequel game. And that's a wrap. Be sure to check out my social links and website link in the video description. Hit the like button, it does help, subscribe, and thanks for watching.